thank you for joining us, Michaela McCord. She's coming all the way from Waco, Texas.
Hi.
Michaela, yeah, hey there,
And
Michaela.
Maslow.
Yeah, and Maslow there too. Great, Maslow. I want to hear all about the connection with Maslow. I think I might know where that name comes from, but maybe you can confirm that. So,
Oh, yes.
Michaela is a master's student in the clinical mental health counseling program at Tarleton State University in Waco, Texas. She's presented research at state conventions as well as for the Texas A&M International University Symposium. Specific interests are in animal-assisted therapy, hence Maslow, and a theoretical orientation to counseling known as Gestalt therapy. Her dog Maslow volunteer together all over their hometown of Waco. She's often known by people around Waco as the one who has Maslow. She's going to be finishing her master's soon and will continue on to a 3,000-hour internship before attaining her full license as a professional counselor.
Yes.
So you're going to be just enlightening us a bit, and Catherine's going to add something too about the psychology behind what's going on right now, Michaela,
Yes.
with COVID.
The psychology behind COVID is what I am presenting. And yes, just to go on and address the not elephant in the room, the dog in the room. This is Maslow. He's the dog I use for therapy around Waco. We go to hospitals and stuff together. So just so you know who he is. And if I have time later, I'll go into the meaning behind his name. I have a lot to cover, so I was
Right.
we're gonna dive into that. But yeah, he's named after a psychologist. Long story short, psychologist that I like. So to start with,
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that guy?
that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. The
I know that. No.
self-actualization, I always say
Yep.
that he gives everyone their love and belonging needs. That's his main job. So I was just going to start out with the general reactions behind COVID and what's been going on with the coronavirus. And I think this is best understood in terms of have y'all heard of Kubler-Ross's stages of grief?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there's 5 stages. It's really used for dying a lot of times, but it's also applicable to grief and loss. And there are 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance, which is ultimately what we all want to get to is acceptance. And so just sort of walk us through real quick of what I've seen sort of happening with this COVID and reaction to it. First we hit denial. So it's in China. It's not where I am. It's not over here. And then the avoiding continues when it's in my country, but it doesn't affect me. And then we have shelter in place, but it's not going to last a long time. It's really an avoidance of anxiety is what denial is. And so now we hit the place where shelter in place is real and this is a real situation. And so then people become the next stage, which is anger. It's a natural response. It's anger about what's going on. And specifically you'll see that of for instance, a lot of facilities have closed down, and because of that, people do become angry. They have to work from home. They lose their livelihoods, and that's again a very natural response. Um, and so then, and again, if y'all have any questions, sometimes I'll stop and just make sure I'm covering everything. So if y'all have any questions, please feel free to interject or comments. Um, and then after that, after anger hits, the next stage is bargaining. And so what happens is people try to negotiate their way out of whatever's going on. So so a lot of times, actually, with this particular situation, I saw this as really the government trying to work with. I'll talk about America because that's where I am right now, and that's what I know the most about. But the government working with us on, okay, well, you can go out into public, but stay socially distanced. We are doing a shelter in place, so they're really negotiating with us, trying to ease the process. But what ends up happening is that ultimately, that's people are still going to have a lot of difficulty accepting what's going on, and ultimately, in the long run, it doesn't end up helping because people don't ultimately want to accept what's going on. And so even though the government's really trying to work with us, ultimately it's still creating some issues with people not wanting to accept. And finally, well, not finally, but the next stage is depression. That's the 4th stage. And what happens is when negotiation doesn't work out, people ultimately hit this state of immobilization. They realize that it's reality. There's no escaping it. They've tried denying it. They've tried getting angry about it. They've tried negotiating, and it's all failing for them. And so now they're in this place of being stuck. And actually, I'm reading this really good book right now called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's a very good book. And at one point, he actually talks about that this idea of learned helplessness develops around when there's a crisis situation and we can't take effective action. What ends up happening is we learn helplessness. We learn that we can't do for ourselves. And I'm going to put a little bit of a pin in that because I'm going to talk about that later when it comes to coping skills. But we really start feeling defeated. I think that's the ultimate word here, is that we've tried and tried and tried to help ourselves in the situation, and we just start feeling defeated.
And we saw that earlier, Mike, in our poll with our candidates. The viewers have said that was the number one word used to describe how they were feeling today.
Exactly, Catherine. In our word cloud, we saw there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it hurts my heart because it really is. It's such a defeated feeling. We lack so much control on what's going on right now, and it's such a defeated feeling. So later when I talk about coping skills, that's something you're going to hear me talk a lot about, is how to combat that feeling of defeat by being able to take action for ourselves. So that should, hopefully that'll help a little bit.
Fantastic.
And then finally, after depression, the end stage, the end goal is acceptance. And it's acceptance of what's going on and ultimately finding peace and comfort in acceptance. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later too. So those are the 5 stages of what I've seen happening. And the only other thing I want to talk about as far as reactions goes is the anxiety. Oh my goodness. The anxiety.
That's another big word we got, was anxiety.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'm covering what people need to have covered. Awesome. But yeah, so one thing I've seen a lot of is this uncertainty about the future. What's going to happen to me? And I want to make the quick distinction here that anxiety is not fear. They're very different things. And it's important because and how you address them. Fear is a very physiological emotion. It's based on how we respond to direct threats to us. Anxiety comes when we're concerned about it's really perceptions about future events that are coming, and not so much something that's directly here, and specifically the meanings that we tell ourselves about events that are coming. So again, I'll talk about that in just a little bit when I get to coping mechanisms, but I do want to say that's not at all to downplay anxiety. Anxiety is a very real emotion that a lot of us are experiencing right now in a very visceral way. So yeah, not at all to downplay, but just there's things that we can do about it even amidst the discomfort.
Yeah, I'm actually just thinking about this. I just discovered when you talked about that, I do change management. So I actually look at the stage of organizations going through change, and and exactly the same thing you just described in terms of personal impact of events. This is the change curve. We look at making change in organizations, and because change is mostly about people, we have exactly the same curve. So I just thought I'd just share that.
That is awesome.
Michaela.
That works perfectly with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I just thought about it. It just came to mind. I use this all the time in my change management work that I do with companies, is realizing this is where you go through these, human beings go through these stages. And I think the reason I brought it up, Michaela, is just as you're going through this, is think about how much this is all about coping with the change to a new normal. And you want to think about that as you comment.
Right. And that's ultimately what's so difficult, is that it's a big adjustment to a new normal. Like you said, it's a huge adjustment. And and I've been seeing more and more acceptance as we've been going on, but you are absolutely spot on. And I loved it in that curve that you showed. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to find that.
Yeah, later. I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Please, yeah. And it said, instead of bargaining, it said, it started with an E. It was or options, or like exploring. It said exploring. And I think that's also very indicative of that, like, negotiation of exploring what options do you have to play with. So, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
No, I'll share that back later. We'll share that around. But go on.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
On the coping side, you said you were going to talk about the coping mechanisms.
Yeah, that's what I was just. Thank you. So I was just about to jump into. So first, acceptance of what is going on. And that is in no way easy. I am not at all saying that it's easy. It's extremely difficult, right? Because this is uncomfortable. And what I'm ultimately saying to people is, you've got to accept the discomfort. That's not easy to do. But ultimately, it leads to peace. clarity. It leads to people to be more comfortable in what's going on when we're able to accept things. Other than acceptance, I really want to take a second to say what I said earlier, that learned helplessness and taking action for ourselves, because right now we're out of control. We really don't have a lot of control of what's going on. And so that creates a lot of anxiety, right? It creates a lot of discomfort. So to be able to then take effective action for ourselves to combat it is so important. So what some things that I would just suggest real quick, simple things like take a walk. It's a gorgeous day outside. When I get off the phone, I'm going to go out there and take a walk. It's so pretty. Simple as taking a shower for yourself, doing some self-care. It can be finding ways to be productive even while we are in a shelter in place, which, you can reach out to neighbors to give back to others. You can try new hobbies. You can even go online and look for job opportunities. So there's a lot of things out there that we can do as far as coping and taking action for ourselves. It's just a matter of finding what works for us.
Right. So on the job aspect of it, when somebody is feeling this thing, and by the way, real quick, before I get into that, when it comes to, you were talking about acceptance, how can people find resources to help them gain that acceptance? Because there are so many people out there feeling so detached and everything. How can they get some resources for that?
There are a lot of things I want to say to that, but I'll keep it short and concise. So the first thing that occurred to me was actually something you did, Catherine, and that is with what you've been doing with COVID and everything. You've been really reaching out to people and normalizing the situation and encouraging others to take action and to do for themselves. And honestly, normalizing is one of the best things that people can do. So to go on social media and see people that are talking about this is stressful. This is so stressful. And that is all over social media. I've actually been really enheartened by that. But yes, there's political stuff and that can be very stressful. But amidst that, there's also a lot of encouragement from employers, from friends, from family. So that's phenomenal. You can even go online and find telehealth counseling. I have a counselor and we moved to telehealth. So we're doing telehealth counseling. It's successful. There have been a lot of studies that prove that it's successful. So there are a lot, and there's even free counseling services out there online. So those, just in a nutshell, just some quick little ideas. Those are some things that pop up, because acceptance of discomfort is not easy, and it takes a lot of practice.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. So what about staying motivated? And like how you go on, I know you do a lot of walks, you take the dogs and the, on the bike and stuff like that. How do you stay motivated, and how do you recommend other people try to find that internal motivation?
Me personally, I find what it is that I love to do. For me, it's my career that I'm working on, counseling. I find ways to cultivate that career for myself, whether it's reading my books, reading not just for class, but other books. I go online, I find some articles. I'm at home anyway right now, I might as well. I do take time for myself. Self-care is very important, because if I just sat in here and filled my head with knowledge, as much as I love to do it, I drive myself crazy. So just getting out of the house and being able to do some things for myself really motivates me, because it refreshes me. And then I'm able to, I take what I call a 911. It's when I just sort of go and I take an emergency moment for myself, and then I come back with clarity and I can readdress the situation.
So that's something that you find important too, is to,
oh, sorry. You sort of froze there for a second.
Hold on. There we go. You got me back?
Yeah, I got you.
There we go. All right. Sorry. I'm technologically dumb. So sorry, everybody. So if somebody does, thank you. That's right, Maslow. If somebody does find themselves getting downtrodden or frustrated, you do recommend taking an emergency, just kind of going, whoop, got to go off and try and do something for self-care.
Yes, because when we get in those places, our body is trying to leave it, honey. Sorry, there's a Penske truck outside for some reason. I'm not really sure what's happening with that. But yeah, so when that happens, take that moment for yourself. Leave it. I'm sorry, he's at the door ringing the doorbell. I'm not sure. We did not have a Penske truck supposed to come today. But anyway, so I'm just gonna let him out real quick, because otherwise he's gonna be barking. Go on, honey. But if you don't take those 911s for yourself, then you will absolutely drive yourself insane. Our bodies are trying to tell us to stop. When that happens, when we're getting stressed, our bodies are like, hey, we need a break. And so to listen to that and do that for your body in the long run is ultimately going to actually keep you more productive, because you'll be able to work for longer periods when you just
That's right.
work with your body.
So when it comes to the job market, and I mean, we've talked about this. And by the way, everybody that does not know this, Michaela also does work with Titan Management, my company. She does our marketing. She's helped with sourcing in the past, so she's very, very familiar with the job market and all of the intricacies that come with that, and the complications. So with everything going on, it's people are, it's so frustrating, and there's fewer jobs, and there's the unemployment rate is ever climbing. However, there are still jobs out there. People want to engage, they want to be employed. How do you recommend that they find ways to motivate themselves and to apply these methods that you're discussing to their job search?
Ultimately, it's really going to come down to the individual and what the individual needs. As far as motivation and motivating oneself, the things that we've talked about, being patient with, this is what I want to say, is I want to say be gracious with yourself. I think that is so important right now, is because a lot of people will start to get in this vicious cycle of, well, I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling down. I have all this stuff going on. I'm anxious, but I've got to get out there and get back in the job market. I've got to do it. And so then they just put all this pressure on themselves. Well, I would say give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace to have a day to feel that stuff, maybe even a couple of days. Do some things for yourself. Take action for yourself so you can be effective action, like we've talked about, to combat that helpless feeling. And then come back to the job market so that you are motivated. Because if you're feeling those things while you're trying to get in the job market, your brain is making negative connections to what you're looking at. Like if you're looking for jobs, your brain is going to be making negative associations with those jobs, and you're already setting yourself up for failure.
That is a great insight. That is a terrific insight. One of the things I spoke about earlier was making sure that you're in the positive mindset, making sure that you are in good energy when you're doing it. So you're saying that you're talking about there actually is a psychological connection to that as well.
Yes, very much so. Very much a psychological reaction. I mean, that was a very behavioral insight on what's been going on, because we're human animals, we make those associations. It's very real.
Yeah, it is. It very much is. All right, Mike, I think he's back. Yep, there he is.
I haven't gone away, because it's really great. I mean, I really liked what you said, Michaela, about don't be hard on yourself if this time you are struggling a bit. And we talked about this before in terms of our feelings, is that, recognize we're human beings and we're going to have these feelings. The question is, do we dwell on them, or do we let them just pass over us, pass through us, and still focus on moving forward? And that's really what I liked from what you said.
Yeah.
That's a great insight on it too. It's a great reflection of what I said, actually.
Yeah. No, I've studied this a bit, and I also love this bit about doing with the change here, because I think what's slowly dawning on many of us is that it's not a matter of this was a period of time where we're going to go back to way it was before. There's going to be some changes in the way we operate. I think some activities and some functions will come back fairly quickly. Others will take a long time.
A long time, yeah.
If they ever come back the way that they were before.
Yeah, if they ever come back.
We had that discussion earlier.
Yeah, the challenge is going to be which ones, right? I think the jury's still out as to which type of activity is going to come back first. Are people going to start hiring like mad, or is it going to come back slowly? Are events going to come back quickly or slowly? I think the jury's still out. Because this is so big for us. So I really appreciate that. And it could well be, if you're able to, Michaela, we're going into a Q&A session now. We're going to ask the audience for some questions.
Yeah.
And,
stay on with us.
If you're able to stay on with
I have a few minutes. Yeah.
That'd be great to see if any questions come up.
I definitely wanted to touch on something real quick. So
Sure.
just before Michaela came on, Fanny was talking about the importance, talking about your volunteer work and about going into this with a giving spirit. And I'm actually going to brag on both of you for a minute, because Michaela, through her work with Maslow, has been making images because she can't take Maslow up to the hospital. So she's been making little cards from Maslow for the patients that then the staff print off and take to the patients, so that they're still getting to see Maz, and it's still cheering them up, and they've had a very positive response. And with you, Mike, I mean, good grief, you went from your home country burning to the ground.
Right. Yeah.
Thank God that's all resolved. Thank God for all. To this, and you're in the heart of it in New York, which, I mean, good God, poor New York. It's been so tragic. And your thought when I very first brought this up was, yes, let me dive in with everything that I've got and help other people. And I do think that there really is something to that, and the energy that it brings and the levity that it brings. And I want to encourage everybody out there that's watching or that sees this recording later to do the same thing, to find something that that lights your fire and brings you joy, and that will give you something to occupy your mind that's positive, and a way to give back. And ultimately it will come back to you. It will come back to you in a good way, and it will make your life better as well if you're helping others.
I think that's right. And so as we just comment here, please let's come in here. We've got some questions from the previous Q&A, I guess. Nina, we could probably leave these questions here and people can add new ones, right? So it's just an open Q&A for questions. We've asked Michaela to stay on for a few minutes in case she could help. Jenny, any general questions about basically anything we've covered so far? But particularly, I think, on the psychology side, the personal side of this.
Right.
How are you? And you can ask a question anonymously. In terms of something you might need some help with, some input on, or a comment you'd like to make. We'd very much like to do that. And I'll just give you a heads up, this will also be followed by a second opportunity for those of you in the audience, if you'd like to take it up, to come on live onto the show. So that'll be coming up shortly. So if you have any questions.
And I do see some people posting things as comments to the other people that had questions. I see you, Demi, on there. Allison.com, I think it's ALISON. There's not two L's as there would be with the name. So Allison.com is great for education and free certifications as well. They have things, I mean, all over the board, whether it's human resources, whether it's IT, whether it's customer service management. Free certifications, you can get some free education. And like I said earlier, again, both Harvard and Stanford do free online learning as well. I highly recommend. In fact, I just saw a course, Michaela, that may interest you. There was one in psychology from Harvard University, so you may want to check that out. It's self-paced.
All about it.
Yeah.
I think
so. Yeah, that may be a good.
I think understanding a bit more about what normal human behavior is a good thing in this time. It's also a great skill to learn in coping with jobs. Anyone who's been working in any sort of role for a while realizes that nothing ever goes perfectly rosily, right? Really difficult situations arise. So
keeps it interesting.
Yeah, it keeps it interesting, but also having that emotional intelligence, Michaela, as well. It's a great skill, and it's something that only comes with time.
Yes.
So not everybody has it as they grow older. It's not actually true, but it's more chance you might have it because you've just seen more stuff and experienced some more stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's sort of something that I also suggest that more experienced people, if they feel they have this, to bring this out in their job applications, to say, hey, look, I'm actually good under pressure. Like, I've dealt with a number of situations where we've had to do layoffs. We've had to, we've had a product launch that failed. We've had, major mistakes with our product line and our supply chain, and we've had to fix them. And they were really very grave issues in our company. And I've dealt with these, and I've sort of been through it, and I know how to cope with them. I mean, I only want to comment about how important that is as a job skill.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
As you were saying that, I was like, yeah, more people should do that because it really does. It brings a whole different level to the ball game. It really does to the ball game of employment and
right.
That's right.
So we have our first question. How can I best organize my day when I'm job searching? Can you give us some examples if you stick with the schedule? Anybody mind if I start on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I spoke about earlier, I'm big on calendaring. You can use Google Calendar.
I got to learn more from you on that, by the way.
Right?
I don't do that enough.
I am. And Mike will attest to the fact I am meticulous and I get through things very, very quickly. And so use a calendar to help organize yourself. Also, I will tell you, know how your brain works. So for instance, I am really slow in the morning. I can't have coffee, so it makes it even worse. So I have to do things that don't require too much active thought on my part. So maybe something like checking my emails, just scrolling through LinkedIn, that's to, engage people a little bit, that kind of thing, something that's not too difficult. And then as my mind wakes up after lunch, for instance, I get this great peak of energy right after I've eaten, and so I go into a lot of in-depth.
Well, I'm just the opposite. That's my dip.
I know. Most people it is. I'm weird. It's a weird. I have a different body chemistry, but so I get into this big peak, and so I go. So you have to know your own mind, but definitely you schedule a block for checking your emails and getting back to people, a block for job searching, and do not do that too long. Don't comb through ads for very long. It will make you go crazy. I'm sure Michaela will touch on that here in a second. The monotony can make your brain, can turn off your brain. So pick a short time to go through jobs, maybe about half an hour. And then go into something like networking, go into, LinkedIn, go into some groups, do a social events for networking everywhere right now. I highly recommend those. So that kind of thing. So set a schedule that's based on how you work, and block out little increments of time, and then come back to those tasks too. Like so kind of go cyclical. Go check emails or respond to potential employers, job search, network, and then go right back through it again. That's my advice. Michaela, anything on the psychology behind any of that?
Honestly, you brushed on a lot of it. The one thing I would have said was the monotony that you brushed on, and that ultimately sort of rewarding our brains by giving us some breaks in there is a great way to stay on top of it for ourselves. And I would just go back to saying sort of what I did before about just taking breaks when your body says you need a break. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself insane.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think that's right. I do that. Yeah, it's just when I say, you know what, I feel depleted at this particular time of the day or whatever. It's saying, you know what, I'm going to take a break, and I just do that and give yourself some self-care.
Take a nap.
It's okay. Yeah, take a nap. It's okay.
Seriously, take a nap.
By the way, you're at home now.
Again,
you got nap facilities, right?
Right, everywhere.
Take a nap. Come on, guys. Yeah, it is. Seriously, take a nap. Oh, here's one. Laid off during this COVID-19, and organizations are not recruiting, which will create a gap in career. I'm assuming that they're worried about how that's going to look on their resume.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Every single employer is going to expect this. Do not worry about that even for a minute. This is something that no one will look down on. What I would recommend, though, is, as we've touched on a few times, sharpen some of those skills while you're, take an online class, get a quick certification in your field of choice. Even a free one, even if it's a 4-hour class, just so that they know that you're keeping your mind sharp. That will give you the competitive edge. But nobody will discriminate against you for this, I assure you.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right.
It's too prevalent of an issue.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, nobody is going to discriminate against you for that.
And if they do, you probably don't want to work there anyway.
And that.
No, and Senthil added the point about we can learn a skill, but without hands-on will not benefit. I think that's true, but there's also this time you definitely can learn a skill, but also maybe you can do some preparation and some planning and some research. That is an activity we can do on top of learning a skill, and that absolutely has benefit. when the market picks back up again, that you may better know the market that you're targeting. You may better know the companies that you'd like to work for. You may better know who you've got to reach out to through your second and third connections on LinkedIn. Things like that, that sort of research that you can do in this pause is really invaluable. Thoughts, guys?
It's just like actually Liz Pike, one of our employers that's participating with Green Rhino Staffing, she pointed out earlier, the importance of paying attention to, the technologies that each company offers and things like that. Guys, that is absolutely what you do, because that's going to tell you who's going to have the most jobs the most quickly. Pay attention to the trends, to Mike's point. Pay attention to the trends with the employers. Pay attention to who's going in a direction that's going to put them in a position to really succeed and succeed quickly. I have a client, for instance, what they do is they help call centers go remote. Right. They are swamped with business right now, and they're look for companies like that. It'll help.
Yeah, we have one of our latest speakers, Denise Browder. She's going to be talking about her company Sway, and that's all about helping companies create more flexible working environments. And isn't that a service that's demanded now?
Actually,
to come
that's
up with
one thing.
Innovative ways to engage, keep your employees engaged where you need to.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing I was going to say towards the end of my presentation that I didn't actually cover, was that's one thing employers can do in this, and what's going on with COVID, is they can actually provide more like work from home options and stuff like that, because that's one of the things that's actually keeping a lot of people from working right now, is that not a lot of employers offer work from home opportunities.
Right, but the interesting thing is this. I think this was sort of like the, I guess, the burning platform, because I think many organizations just had a preconceived idea that certain types of roles can't be done remotely, or can't be done remotely most of the time. Because it's not always just either way. It could be part-time remote. It could be to say that you need to be in the office maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, but the other 2 days you could work remote. Oh, no, this is required in the office. And I think this time has thrust us into this period of time where I think there's going to be some trials that say, wow, actually this did work.
This would be okay, yeah.
Yeah, it would be okay. And we were talking before, Michaela, about I take the train every day. I ain't missing that.
Yeah, right.
No. Nobody's missing that. Nobody's missing that at all.
I noticed some sarcasm in there.
No.
We had so here's somebody. How can I find new opportunities? Wow, we got a lot of people popping up now. So I saw one a minute ago that was talking about, with all the new remote possibilities, keeping, what's going to keep companies from outsourcing to other countries versus staying inside the U.S. A few things. Number one, patriotism. It counts more than you think to a lot of companies. Number two is that it's going to be, it's a whole other world to get outsourced employees than it is to have domestic, and it can present some problems. And it's actually very hard to manage. You can't hold the same accountabilities, things like that. So I wouldn't worry about that too much, guys. You're still going to have tons of opportunities. And by the way, a lot of these opportunities will be staying remote.
It will happen. You will see companies that will use this to outsource. But there's not, I've been in organizations where we've done that, and it's really, really hard to make it work well. So I wouldn't get too worried about it, because it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do well and provide good service to your customers. It's really hard to do. So I wouldn't worry about that. I would focus on, what's relevant for you is you want to get a role here with say a US company, then focus on those US companies. Focus on what value would you add to those US companies, and don't focus on things you can't control.
That's right. Yeah. And you can't control everything.
No.
So this one, and actually I'm going to circle back to Michaela on this one. Should I be putting in 8 hours a day job searching? I was told I should pretend it's like my real job. Before I let it go to Michaela, what I'll say on that is I treat it more like a part-time job. You should be spending about 4 hours a day, and that's including your networking, the cycling. I was talking about the networking, the combing through jobs, and the returning and the replying to emails, a total of about 4 to 5 hours a day max. Because otherwise you'll overload your brain. So Michaela, thoughts on that?
I'm trying to find that comment. I'm not seeing
It just
it.
said, should I be putting in 8 hours a day and job searching? I was told I should pretend like it's my real job.
I would just really say what works for you.
Mm.
That's what I would ultimately go to is, are you getting the turnaround that you want? I think that's going to be the biggest question issue here. But I think, Catherine, you're also really right. 4 to 5 hours of consistently sitting at a computer, being able to apply for jobs and do that kind of thing. But yeah, just what's working. If
And
4 to 5 hours isn't working, maybe some more time being put in would help.
and I think the
But yeah,
breaks that you were talking about earlier, if you could
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, the mental breaks.
yeah. Oh, you want me to talk about it again?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, yeah. Just honestly, just giving yourself the grace to take breaks for yourself. We talked a lot about self-care since I've been on, and just being able to understand that we're human beings and we get overwhelmed by things. And if you're getting overwhelmed, take a break for yourself and then come back to it later.
Mm.
And because if you just keep pushing through it, it's just going to drive you crazy and
Hmm.
ultimately make it a negative process, and you'll start making connections and
Right.
affiliation, affiliating that with a negative
Right.
process.
I think that's
It'll
right.
drag you down in your interviews, and it will also make
Hmm.
it so that you miss obvious things in the job postings, or that you miss instructions, things like that. So it will tire out your brain. I do not recommend 8 straight hours a day of that. Absolutely not.
No, there's a startup that I work with in New York called Cave Day. And what they do is do intensive work sessions where you take all distractions out.
Hmm.
But it sounds like very intensive. But one of the things they do is every 50 minutes they stop. And there's
Huh.
some science that says that pretty much we start going downhill pretty quickly after about 50 minutes of intense concentration. You take a
Yep.
break. So I like the
Yep.
idea of taking those frequent air breaks, even if it's just. I know there's an app you can get, I think, that actually reminds you. It'll actually remind
Yes.
you every
Yeah, there
50
are.
minutes, get up and just walk
Keeps
around.
you accountable.
Yeah, because I think again, this is something that I know I learned a bit in psychology, Michaela, is our bodies are very closely wired to our brains and vice versa. So
Oh,
we get
yes.
brain power when we work our bodies. In fact, there used to be a
Hmm.
thing that says if you want to do really, really good brain training, train your body.
Yes, we are holistic beings.
Yeah,
We are body, emotions, brains. We are
yeah,
everything and then some. And so you are absolutely right. You've got to take care. If you're taking care of one, you've got to take care of the other.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, listen to it all. If your brain's telling you to stop, stop. If your body's telling you to stop, you'll know it. Stop.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we want to continue this going for a few more minutes here, guys. If you've got any other questions you want to put to us, particularly while we have Michaela, please just enter
We have a
them
couple
into
more
the QA.
minutes.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for staying on
Yeah,
with us, Michaela.
it's been
Let's
fun.
take a couple. Yeah, let's take a couple more questions if anybody has them. And then we will go into the next session. We're going to be providing an opportunity again for someone from the audience to come live into the show with us and
Right.
share something about your job experience, particularly share your elevator pitch. And we very much
We'll critique
we
you.
love to do that with you. So that'll be our next session before, and then just to give you a bit of heads up after that, we then have Gabby coming in with us. Gabby's going to be talking to us about our relationship between LinkedIn profile and resume. That's just after the bottom half of the hour. We've got some great other people coming on as well. So certainly
Awesome.
stay tuned with us. But is there any other final questions that anybody has? And also we can, any other final comments that you might have, Michaela, on what you've been hearing, some of the questions that have come in, anything else coming to mind?
No, the only thing I could think about was actually before I got on, when Fanny was still on presenting
Mm,
with Michael.
right,
She was saying at the end some really encouraging, powerful comments. And I know it was specifically for their they were talking about doing videos, right?
right,
And
yep.
how to prepare for videos.
Posting on
But she was
LinkedIn particularly.
oh, okay, but she was just saying something like feeding out instead of in, and I think that really can apply to jobs as well. Is like what do you have to contribute out instead of like
Yeah,
being so worried about, oh, I'm going to say the wrong thing, I'm going to do the wrong thing. But it's like, what do you have to contribute? Look at it that way. And I think that was so profound. I wrote that down. That was a note that I took. That was just really stuck with me.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And again, it's so much of this is connected, and that's why I like to see that it's so related and so consistent, is that human beings, we actually get a lot of satisfaction from giving. And sometimes we feel it's going to deplete us, but it has an amazing effect of actually feeding our soul, because when we give.
It's regenerative.
The great thing about that in job search is when we give, it also highlights what we're good at, right? If we're talking about unique value proposition, so it's a win-win situation. It can be amazingly a great way to feed your soul by doing that. Is to you see some of the strongest leaders. You think back, the strongest leaders we've seen back through history have been. Before I come, we have one question here. Is those who in really bad periods of adversity, they rise up and they give. They don't ask, they give. And you say, oh, wow, how can they do that? And you say, well, what you don't know is often they feel amazing from doing that. Like it pays back many more times. I've done a lot of volunteering work over my time, and I just know that from that is just, so think about that, as it can really feed your soul to consider yourself as a net giver and not a net receiver, and how it can pay back in ways you don't know.
It's often refreshing.
100%. I try to do a lot of volunteer work for the same reason. It actually provides me energy. So somebody asked, I'm shy and have data privacy concerns. I don't feel comfortable doing a video. Is there something else I can do? I'm not sure if they're referring to coming on the show.
No, I think maybe I could take a stab at that. Look, there's various ways. It's a great question, Mr. or Ms. Anonymous. And I can see you maybe are a bit shy, and that's perfectly okay.
That is perfectly okay.
It's perfectly okay. It's a natural. By the way, you don't realize that I think 70% of people who go to networking events absolutely hate them with a passion.
No, I do them all the time. I hate them.
Don't worry about that. It's amazing. And I actually think, so I am an introvert, but I learn techniques to get through things. And sometimes I think introverts have a unique advantage in being able to have empathy with their customers and their clients, and can be very successful. So I just want to put that in place. But shy and data privacy concerned, don't feel comfortable doing a video. So there's many ways that you can share your unique value proposition, your secret sauce, your superpower. You could obviously is just comment on other people's posts. So watch the social channels that are important for you. If you're B2C, it may be Instagram, Facebook, maybe where you want to be posting. That's where your intended customer client hangs out. If it's B2B, business to business, it's probably more LinkedIn. Is you can just comment on people's posts and add value to them. Don't just say, "Oh, great comment," but add something. If it's in your wheelhouse, add a comment about what you know, and enhance that. It could be writing an article. We heard that before. I think Michael Goldberg mentioned that. You can publish an article on LinkedIn, publish an article on Medium about this. I've done a few of those. You can, maybe you could be a guest on the panel where you're not the main presenter. You could be a panel member on a show. You could write a book. There's a number of things. Some of these things, writing a book is a pretty tall order. That's a very, very hard thing to do. It's very time consuming, but it's certainly one way to get, if you want to get above the fray, that's definitely a way to do that. So video is not the only way to contribute content. It could be text, it could be writing an article, it could be writing a book, it could be just being a member of a panel like we have Michaela on here today, exactly like that. So think about other methods.
Yeah, right. And if, by the way, if anybody does want to come on the show that does feel shy and doesn't want to do a video and that doesn't want to post their email where other people can see it, I am posting my email on the side, and you can email my personal email directly. I will see it on my phone, and then I will give that to Nina, and we can go about it that way.
Sure, absolutely.
Or to me, that might
and if
be.
you like, actually, Nina, I guess we could also put the answers to the next poll, which we're about to move to. We could actually make them not to show, if that was an issue. But certainly, yes, you can do that. So, Michaela, look, you're welcome to stay. Thank you very much for what
I was about to say,
doing.
unfortunately, I've got a lot of work I've got to get back to.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for
all
having me.
you've done with your clinical mental health and counseling background and all that. It's been great to have you on. So thanks for your time today.
Of course. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one.
Great.
Thank you.